in action. So good morning once again. You're listening to the Discomfort Zone. And I need to tell you at this point that the views and opinions expressed in this program are solely of those producing it and or the people appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Line 90.7 FM, its staff, sponsors, or the Pennsylvania State University. For details and a copy of the transcript of today's broadcast, you can email officers@theline.fm or write to the Line 90.7 FM WKPS 125 Hub Robeson Center, University Park, PA 16802. So once again, you are listening to the Discomfort Zone, and I'm your host, David. And I'm so pleased this morning, that to be able to tell you that you're not going to have to listen to me for a whole hour. I have a terrific guest in the studio. Lieutenant Colonel Bill Edmonds is with me this morning. He is here in State College because he's going to be speaking with Sam Richards' class. And I will just say up front that any friend of Sam Richards is a friend of mine. So I am just so thrilled to have him in the studio this morning. He is the author of an article, A Soldier Story, that you may have picked up. And another one, Moral Injury. And then just a recently released book, God Is Not Here. And so let me just begin by thank you for being here and say hi to our audience, Bill.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here. Hello, everyone.
All right. So, for those of in the audience who are not familiar with the work that you've been doing, give us a little background. How did you get to writing these books? And then we'll talk a bit about what's in them.
Well, I'm one of, I guess, many American stereotypes or archetypes, more correctly. I'm the descendant of Swedes and Germans and a few Native Americans that went west to become Oregon homesteaders. And I'm a brother of two Mexican and two Venezuelan sisters who later became my adopted sisters. I'm the older brother of a Oregon medicinal marijuana grower.
No kidding.
And I'm the son of two beautiful people who, after they graduated from UC Berkeley, they went in the Peace Corps instead of the Vietnam War. And as I grew up, I watched them essentially dedicate their lives to helping disadvantaged inner city kids in Los Angeles and then in a small rural immigrant community. But if you were to ask my family on where my story began, it was probably an unexpected life decision. At the age of 17, I decided to join the military and become an Army Ranger. And then I went into after Desert Storm. This was many moons ago. After Desert Storm, I went back to college and got a degree in international relations, and then a commission in the Army, a second lieutenant in the Army Infantry. Volunteered for Special Forces, and for the next 19 years, I guess dedicated my life to finding and stopping terrorists. But I guess
Yeah.
I wanted to be like my parents, making a difference in the world, but to do so in harmony with my character. So it was probably synchronicity that my first Special Forces assignment began in September of 2001.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So since those last 31 years, I've lived and worked throughout the world: Africa, Middle East, Arabian Peninsula, Asia, Europe. Accumulating both combat deployments and several near-death experiences. And those experiences left their scars, I wouldn't change a single thing about those experiences. Not because what happened should have happened, but because it did happen. And what did happen, put me on the journey that I am today, which, I've described as, one of backing through a side door into consciousness.
That's a fascinating phase. So we're certainly going to talk about your book, and we'll talk about the articles you've written. We'll get to all that, but I kind of free flow here just a little bit, so I apologize for that. But this idea, that side door backing into consciousness, that phrase stuck out to me, and I wonder if you could explain what you mean by that.
I mean that,
Not to put you on the spot.
No, I, as I think most human beings, we live in an illusion that we know ourselves, when in fact we're lost in our minds, and that we believe that there is an objective reality. When my experiences have shown me that reality is in fact your reality or my reality, and that I create my reality every single second of every single day, and that reality is a reflection of my inner state of being. And I think we can choose to step out of our incessant and compulsive and mostly negative thinking, and instead of always looking to a future as in the hopes of something better, the future always comes in the present moment. The future and the past are merely memory or anticipation.
So, of course, our audience can't see that I'm connecting so much with what Bill is saying here. This idea. Well, I don't know. I should talk less and listen more. It's probably a good idea, but that we are creating a reality largely, in terms of how we approach things, and I'm not going to try to repeat it because you said it really good, really well. Wow, well, that was a fabulous explanation. Yeah, and this idea of, so, I don't know. Again, I apologize. I go here and there, but one of the things, and we just mentioned real briefly about the review in the New York. I read the review of your book in the New York Times, and one of the things that struck me just so oddly was almost a skepticism. And now, having talked about it with Bill just a little bit, I understand a little bit what the motivation for that might be. But a skepticism about, is this even true? Did this really happen? And, and like, well, it's in some places you put more than one person into one character in order to better, but this is something that authors do all the time in order to better explain something. And I thought, well, you don't understand the nature of truth. Something that can be even fictional. Some of the best fiction is truth, right? It explains truth, Man from Mars. It's fiction, but it can be true. And you can also take things that are factual and twist them in such a way that they're not true. How to Lie with Statistics is a classic of that thing. So that was, so this idea, I'm going down the path, and I'll get back out of this here in a minute, but it's really an interesting question to me, how we determine what is actually true, and is that a teachable thing? Can we teach people how to figure out what's true? I don't know, but that may be a question for another day. So you can jump in at any point, but if not, the thing that kind of kicked off this was the article that you wrote, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about. I think it's really important for our audience to hear which
article are you referring to?
The Soldier Story. That was the first one I read. That goes back a little bit now.
Yeah, that was in. I wrote that in the last 2 months of my 1 year deployment in Iraq. I think that was my third deployment, and I've had like 14 so far. But,
wow.
I wrote that article because I was in Iraq, and I was at the time I was observing ourselves from the other side of the fence, and to say that because I lived and worked on a tiny little Iraqi base in the center of Mosul, Iraq. And my job was to advise an Iraqi intelligence officer and his interrogations of his prisoners. And I worked in a little basement Iraqi prison to help him find, capture, and interrogate insurgents, and then so that he could find, capture, and interrogate more.
Right.
But my moral responsibility was to try to deter him from torturing his prisoners, and to abide by the Geneva Conventions,
right,
or at least to teach them about the Geneva Conventions. But I wanted to make a difference, and the only tool I had, because I couldn't give him orders. This was
right, your advisor. Yeah,
I was an advisor. The only tool I had was persuasion, but I wanted to make a difference, so I immersed myself in that reality. And as the weeks became months, and then the months became a year, and the dozens of prisoners became hundreds, and the hours became hundreds of hours of interrogations. Life seemed to condense and come at me in this thick and steady pour. And over time, every name became a face, and every face, be that face, angel or devil, face seemed to condemn me to moral failure, because it seemed as if every decision, every choice, always resulted in the opposite of every good intention. So I came back from Iraq after a year, and there was no visible wounds, but I was different on the inside. I just didn't know it at the time. So I locked away those memories, and I focused my energies on creating a new life, a new family, a wife, and but underneath those beautiful things for 5 years, I now realize I was still living inside of that basement Iraqi prison.
Right.
And memories of war just don't fade away. When you leave them alone, they come alive, and they seep and reach through time with these searching and grasping claws. And if you deny your those memories, they can consume. And that's essentially what happened to me.
You talked. Was one comment you made about talking to your grandfather? When he was close to passing, and how he kept his experience in World War II. He never. And this was very typical. No one ever talked about that when they came home, and yet here it was, probably 50 years after he'd been in the war. It's still a central part of his experience, and what he's carrying around about that. And I don't. Yeah.
Well, to be human is to suffer both good and bad. We are both feel joy in life, but we will, all of us, at some point or another, experience some loss in some form. And over life, that loss will often be immense to very small, like, a test, an F on the test, or all the way to, the loss of your own life, or and the loss of your family and everything you have. And those losses have a psychological impact. When you attach your mind to some external thing and derive meaning from that, life will always take that meaning lay. Impermanence is a fundamental nature, an entropy.
Sure, yeah. And
both with the outgoing and the ingoing. And eventually you'll experience loss. But war, is like immersing yourself in the crucible of human condition, and it's compressed. All of those, the normal lifespan of loss and grief, can seem to be compressed into one small deployment. And I think military people, especially American military, they a great source of meaning that they get is from their morality, from the ideals, codes, and values that structure their world and give them a sense of order. We are in America raised on our morals. The military selects on and trains morality. Whether you agree with that morality or not, there is still a moral code.
Well, that's one of the things that really stuck out to me, is this idea of how motivated by a sense of morality, wanting to do the right thing, that people that are in active service, that's a big part of their motivation. And the fact, in your story that you had parents that went to the Peace Corps, I'm wondering, if my audience is able to wrap their heads around that. Well, they didn't go to Vietnam. You volunteered to go to Iraq, and you're motivated by the same thing. That, and it's like, oh, my head is exploding. I cannot understand how that is. And yet, that's true. I mean, that is true. It's the word, the sense of idealism that brought you into that. And then, I err if I try to speak to you, but so you can correct me. And yet, the idealism was not enough to guarantee that the decisions that you made were satisfactory.
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean,
well, yes, correct. And I'll go back because I realized I didn't fully answer your question about that.
That's right. It's probably my fault.
that first question about my first article. Essentially, I came to see, from living inside of the prison, I came to see ourselves, America and Americans, and the American military from their perspective. And I was seeing how our policies and our strategies and our tactics, and most importantly, our one-on-one interactions between Iraqis and Americans were, we were creating more insurgents than we could ever capture or kill.
Right.
I wanted to, I guess, I had something to say, and I needed to get it out.
Yeah.
And so I did. And when I did that, I thought, that was the end of my career back then. Because back then, it was almost tantamount to, betrayal.
Right.
To criticize in such harsh ways. But I was amazed by the positive reception, both from within the military and from veterans. All of the many other people who have served their country in other war zones around the world, and done so by interacting with the local population and not seeing the local population as the enemy. I was pleasantly surprised with the reception of the article. But when I look back on that article, you can I can see the signs of moral injury that I hadn't yet come to terms with, underlying all of the sentences. I guess at the time the voice I had could only talk about that aspect of my experience and not some of the more deeper things.
So this idea, and we can get started on this. I thought that's a very interesting idea to me. Of course, everyone is familiar with how the experience affects veterans, and so many come back with PTSD, but this is different. You're making a distinction here between what we think we know about PTSD and what you're calling moral injury.
Yeah. So
this is a very interesting concept. And
moral injury, it started primarily the term moral injury became more popularized by I guess within the community, a very famous book called Achilles in Vietnam by the doctor and psychologist Jonathan Shea, where he was seen with his work with Veterans Administration, I believe it was in Boston, that there was something other than PTSD that could explain. You see, psychological trauma is not abnormal. It is it's part of being human, and any trauma is when some experience in life goes so wrong that it causes a cognitive dissonance. Now, PTSD, you have to have experienced some overwhelming threat to your life. It's fear.
Right.
PTSD is about fear and what fear does to you. But fear is just one of the many sources of cognitive dissonance. And I think we are, as a community, we try to put these psychological traumas into boxes, very small boxes, and we try to say and define that. And PTSD is one of the many small boxes. Yet there's other types of trauma other than fear of your loss of your own life. Moral injury, there's many different conceptualizations of it. Essentially, I believe that human beings, from the moment we're born, and the moment we become self-aware, we, right or wrong, derive meaning from external conditions, from external things, whether that be, as a small child, whether that be, nowadays an iPad,
right.
or all the way to a job or a function in life, a role, a parent, a mother, a father, a car, your body, how you look. And one of the most profound sources of meaning is human morality, and how morality, our inner sense of right and wrong, how that is the fuel, our empathy and compassion are the fuel for the basis, the source of and basis for our morality, and how morality gives us, whether we know it or not, it gives us a sense, it gives us meaning.
Right.
And when the world doesn't act or happen according to your morality, it can be taken away. Literally, morality, I think, is a person's morality becomes conditioned in the brain, and when a situation is contrary to what your expectations are, that gap can become a chasm, and it actually does literally feel like you're losing a limb, or multiple limbs.
Say that again.
It can feel when you lose the sense of order that morality provides you. It makes you feel like you can, like, literally you have lost a limb.
I got you.
A limb.
Yeah.
It is a physical pain that your brain inflicts on your body because it's resisting. It's not only denying. It's not only resisting. It's denying what has already happened, and it's saying, "I don't want this to have happened." So unconsciously, it's inflicting your body with just immense negative energy, and that can have tremendous impacts. Not only how you view, but also how you interact with the world. And a new story. And when you lose meaning, the world can become no longer meaningful. Other people can become no longer benevolent, and the self, especially the self, can become suddenly unworthy.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well, thank you. So, believe it or not, we've made it through the first half hour here. So we have some of the bottom of the hour, the stuff that we have to do. So don't touch that dial, so to speak. I'm speaking here with Lieutenant Colonel Bill Edmonds, and who is on campus here and for the day, and we'll speak in the Sam Richards class this afternoon. This is great. I'm really thank you so much, Bill. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And welcome back, State College. Once again, you're listening to Discomfort Zone. I'm your host, David, and I'm speaking here with Lieutenant Colonel Bill Edmonds. I'm just so thrilled to have him in the studio here today. I've meant to mention before the break that if you have a question for Bill, that you can call in. It's a call-in show, 814-865-9577. It's 865-WKPS. And as I usually mention, if you have missed any part of the show and you're just tuning in, and this is a keeper, I think, I upload all my shows to sites.psu.edu/Hutch. That's HUTCH 153. And so I will get to that later today, and you can listen again if you missed any part of this. So again, once again, Bill, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
You just recently wrote a book, Soldier's Story. I have that right?
Yeah,
no. God is not here. I read my own notes.
That was 5 years ago, though, so it's not that recent.
Not that recent. Okay, well, new to us, I suppose. Yeah. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that. And my first question was, why the title? Where did that come from?
Okay. I think previously I already mentioned how I was an advisor to an Iraqi intelligence officer who was been interrogating insurgents and traitors and terrorists for over 30 years. And it was my job to help him, but also my responsibility to try to convince him that torture wasn't the right decision, and how over the many months how essentially how every prisoner, whether that person be a angel or devil, became a face, and that face seemed to I felt condemned to moral failure, because it seemed as if every choice made in the present resulted in some consequence that was the opposite of that. What I thought was a good intention, and some prisoners provided information, but often it was it came too late. I remember one prisoner let us know about a little girl who had become kidnapped and to make it into a sex slave. And so we went in to try to find her. And those who had kidnapped her, we found them, but not her. And we brought them in. And it was a family, a father, that father's brother, and that father's son. And we pitted them together. And I remember, the father, yelling, "It wasn't me who killed her. It was you. You're the one who shot her with 2 rounds to the back of the head." And then the brother would yell back, "Well, yeah, but you're the one who threw her body in the river." Later, we found her in the reeds of the Tigris River. She was 12, and her name was Aisha. Or I remember we also got another interrogation. It just took too long, and the boy we found was inside of a hidden room in a house. He was chained to a wall, and he was covered with dried semen. He was their sex slave, and he was catatonic. And I remember convincing the Iraqis not to torture one prisoner who was stayed silent. So we had to release that person back onto the streets. If we couldn't get incriminating information or confession, that person had to be released. That person. So we did. Several months later, the Iraqi army had captured him again and brought him right back to our prison. But this time, he was captured with the videotapes of the 10 executions that he had gone on to commit. And I watched those videotapes, and to him, he said, I would either shoot them in the back of the head, or I would cut them her head off with a blade. And I asked him why, what were their names, and he said, I don't know. I was just paid $50 per person. So those, and then another prisoner went on to kill other service members. One Master Sergeant Anthony Yost was killed entering a house that was booby-trapped by a former prisoner that we released. Tony is survived by his wife and 3 kids today. So it seemed, that I wanted to do good in the moment, in the present moment.
Right.
It seemed as if the future always was the opposite of my good intentions, or our good intentions. But I've come to understand that the future that we experience is a reflection of your inner state of being, and that only happens in the present. The future and the past are mind constructions, whether that be memory, the past,
Right.
or the future, which is anticipation, prediction. The only thing real is what is happening now.
This is true. Yeah,
and so that's, and I think my year in Iraq, it taught me to understand the saying that has become a cliche, is that, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
Because an intention means you're doing something now to achieve something in the future.
Yeah. So while we're on the break, I asked the question because I know it was in somebody's head, and Bill gave me the perfectly reasonable answer. I was thinking back, comparing his experience with that of his parents, who saw the Vietnam War and said, we don't want any part of that. We're going to be conscientious objectors, essentially, and we're going to go into the Peace Corps. And I said, what about the person who looks at it and says, well, I wouldn't have put myself in that situation. But the fact of the matter was you were already in the military, so the idea of going to Iraq, it wasn't like you could see the Iraq War and say, oh, no, that's not moral. I'm not going to be part of that. Mm-hmm. You're already there. And so then you end up saying, okay, how can I be a moral person in this situation? Because they're, good intentions. I mean, and so I just thought I would put that out there in case it was floating around anybody else's head. You have to, like you say, you're in the present, so you have to make decisions in the present based on your sense of what's the right thing to do. And you can't change the fact that, well, I'm in the present now. I mean, I can't go back to the past and make a different decision. I'm here now, and now what do I do? And I don't know. I hopefully that's reasonably lucid.
Yeah. The military is merely a reflection of America.
Yeah.
Quite literally a reflection of America. We're just in microcosm.
That's so important.
A small 1% microcosm of America.
Which, of course, as many people said, now that it's only the 1%, we don't have to pay attention to it so much. It's not in the public consciousness as much as it was back when we had the draft. So let me switch directions if it's okay. What are you, speaking about intentions, what do you hope comes out of, I mean, you kind of felt, we were talking before the show, you felt, I have to say this, what do you hope what do you hope to see happen as a result in some small way? I mean, what could you hoping to be a part of?
Well, so I talked before about how when I came home from Iraq, I locked away those memories and focused my energies on, more beautiful things like my family or creating a new family, which I didn't have before. But, at time, after 5 years, living became so exhausting that literally not living became preferable. And those memories are still to this day. I can in virtual reality, immersive VR. The sights and sounds and smells and touch. I can remember, wanting to jump off a cliff or drive my car off the side of the road and how I'd be there, and seeing a tight corner approaching, but my speed would stay constant, and I would imagine my hands on the 10 and 2 of the steering wheel and not changing, and just
right
sense of floating and smiling and feeling free. But then something unexpected happened. 8 years after I left Iraq, I was in Central Africa. I was part of the U.S. mission to help Africans find and kill Joseph Kony and stop his Lord's Resistance Army. And if you remember that group, since 1986, Kony and his band had been roaming South Sudan, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Central African Republic for almost 20 years, and had killed upwards of 100,000 people, and abducted close to 60,000 children to become either child soldiers or sex slaves. And so it's our job to try to stop him and his group, which fortunately we did. We didn't find him, but we did stop his group. Anyway, so it's 2014, and I found myself flying back from a tiny little military outpost, a South Sudanese military outpost that was carved out from the jungles of South Sudan. And I was in this tiny little airplane, about 15,000 feet, and the engines purr. It was loud, but it was soothing. And all of a sudden, the spin of the propeller started to slow and then stopped. And I looked out the other side of the airplane and saw the other propeller, and I started to count, and I got to 13, and that propeller stopped. And then I remember falling back into my seat and hearing the air, whispering over the fuselage, and the silent. It was tranquil. It was like, soaring on warm thermals. But then I suddenly realized that the plane was no longer working, and that we were falling. And so I looked out the side, and I looked down, and there was, thousands of square miles of a sea of green, an endless triple canopy jungle without any roads. Essentially, when you confront death, and that death is sudden and unexpected and imminent, mostly your mind stops because your body intelligence takes over, and it forces you to focus no longer in the past or future. It focuses, which is the normal existence for most humans.
Right.
Because if you don't focus on the present, you'll die. However, in that airplane, there was nothing that I could do. And so I had time to contemplate the prescience of death that was coming. But despite what most people think, when you have time to contemplate death, and that is very near, and you have knowledge of it coming, your own life is not usually what people think of. Because what you're thinking of is what the loss of your life means.
Right.
And the loss of your life means everything that has become important to you over the course of your life. The meaning that allows you to keep on breathing will die with you. And so my world focused down onto a single point of light, which was my family, and how in a few seconds, when the plane strikes the trees, they would be dying as well. And that prescience, moved from my mind into every one of the 40 trillion cells that comprise this consciousness, and blossomed not into agony, surprisingly. It blossomed into a vibrant aliveness and an absolute peace that can only be described as beyond understanding. And I experienced that. But even more important than I guess, more profound than that experience of feeling was my feeling of oneness. I could literally sense the world around me and my connection to it, from the trees below me to the seat in front of me to the other passengers who were sitting around, 3 other passengers who were sitting around me silently, or even to the 2 pilots who were screaming crash landing. I felt connected to the world, and I realized that I am energy. You are energy. We are energy beings, and we're connected to not only to each other, but to every other living and non-living thing. And when we feel that connection, and that knowing is a felt experience, and we live our life having that feeling that something amazing happens, and that we're born with two miracles, I believe. Charles Darwin said that of all the differences that make humans, and I'll paraphrase, all the differences that make humans unique, the most important difference from us and the lower animals is our moral sense or conscience. And when we feel separate, when we believe in the illusion of separateness, we can artificially attenuate and apply with bias our empathy and compassion, which should be two limitless, capacities and abilities. But when we feel unconnected, we draw a conceptual circle around our feet, and those that we allow conceptually inside that circle get the full measure of these two miracles, and those outside get some portion or even none at all. And if you look back in human history, 5,600 years of recorded misery and atrocity. You can hop, skip, and jump from exclusive little empathy and compassion island to island all the way to the present day, where we are led by an island of one, and how the exact opposite is occurring simultaneously and paradoxically, that the entire human population can't even extend empathy and compassion around the planet. And I think we've become an existential threat, not only to ourselves, but the world.
So I'm sitting here, and I'm hoping my audience has a similar reaction. I'm like, oh, that's what I've been trying to say. Yeah, Bill, this idea of... I actually have talked about the illusion of separateness. And if we could, hopefully you don't have to have a life-threatening situation to see that. I don't.
I got pulled into this kicking and screaming. I was a particularly dense person.
As we all are, yes.
And so it took a lot of motivation to have me open my eyes. Close to 14 combat deployments and years of immense suffering, topped off with a couple near-death experiences. And when I in that plane, after that plane, I realized that I'd experienced this knowing, this oneness with totality previously. In other near-death experiences, from the sniper bullets that you just missed, or the mortar or rocket rounds, or the suicide vests that blew just a second too early or too late, and I was outside of the kill radius, or or the hundreds of combat patrols. I can remember those were the times I felt most alive. And I thought, now I understand why. It's because at those times were the times that my mind slowed down and I became still. And that from underneath that stillness, I experienced who I truly am. Underneath the obscuration of our thinking, we are beings, and that came through. But those sudden and unexplained moments of contentness, I allowed to leave unexamined and unexplained, and so it was quickly forgotten. But that airplane crash was different, and it smacked me over the head, I think, and that was when I have began that what I said that the journey that I'm on today, and which I always will be, which is the journey of coming back into consciousness, and I'll always be on that journey because it's
the destination is to not forget.
Right.
Nearly every major religious, spiritual, or humanistic tradition has learned this wisdom previously,
and forgotten,
has forgotten what that original teaching was. They're all fingers pointing to a single destination, just using different words and different figurative language to point to that same truth that can't be put into a word. But those original teachings have been lost in the clouds of mistranslation and misinterpretation or intentional subversion for more earthly passions.
I've been trying to find someone to have this conversation with for years now. So this is really good, and I'm left almost speechless, which is probably just as well. So, little dead air is okay. I mean, I just let people let people absorb that. I think, although this is probably the least important part of the story, obviously you're still here.
Yes.
So what happened?
Well, unbeknownst to the passengers, at the very last second, the pilots had found a tiny little road. But we didn't know that. They were so focused on
right, doing the job. Yeah,
they're so focused on flying that they forgot to mention that to us. So I remember looking out the window and literally seeing the leaves go by the sides of the window, and thinking that this is it. Yeah. I remember closing my eyes and feeling a crash, and realizing that, and looking, opening my eyes and looking out the front windows of the cockpit. I mean, it's a tiny little airplane, but because you could just I was literally like 2 feet behind the pilots, and looking out and seeing that a huge or a big truck coming right at us, and then hopping over the truck and clipping a tree, and hitting back on the road, and then screeching to a halt, and realizing that this in the 100,000 square miles of a nearly roadless triple canopy, one of the most remote areas of Africa, I think, if not the most remote area,
we find this road, and not just the road, the perfect road that was just wide enough, just long enough, and just straight enough,
to fit. And I remember getting out and looking, and the wingtips were, on the right hand side, it was a cliff to the right and going up, and a cliff to the left going down, and the wingtips were probably about a foot away from the side of the cliff on the right, and about the tires were right to the edge of the cliff on the left. So talking to the investigators of the accident later on, they said, based upon, it was like, a 0.001% chance of survival. But I would never change a single thing about that or anything else in life.
Right. I hear that.
There's a beautiful saying, and I'm not sure where it comes from, but it said that, the snow falls and every flake in its right place.
Yeah.
And it's not that the snow is choosing to fall. It's that I am viewing the snow as falling exactly where it should have fallen. And that makes all the difference in the world. When I view what is happening and I don't mind what happens. And I instead of labeling the present, good or bad, either pulling it toward me because I want it or pushing it away because I don't. When I allow things to happen, miracles tend to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as I sometimes will say, it's all good. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, Bill. Okay, I know you have other things to do here today, but this has been so great.
So get back to your point is,
all right.
When the time comes right for every single person, as it always will, because life will always give you a second chance. When the time comes right, there'll be no greater reward than someone learning from my mistakes and discovering what I discovered, who they truly are, sooner than I, and especially with much less kicking and screaming. So I guess that's my motivation.
Got it. That's wow. So I'm probably in error in doing this, but again, I would just want people. So go back. You can go and find this. That you'll be able to find the podcast of this later today. And I'll mention this one more time: sites.psu.edu/Hutch HUTCH153. It's worth listening to again, I'm sure. And maybe this is not a fair question. What could the military learn from this? Is there anything we could do? I mean, we the people, decide what kind of direction our institutions go. Mm-hmm. Is there anything we should do differently? Anything that jumps out that we could?
Let me think. I mean, if I to put into a single tweet over the radio,
okay,
I had to. I would probably, from the moment that we enlist young Americans into the military, teach them that war is filled. That even though you might be an extremely moral person, the world doesn't care, and that life will inevitably violate your morality, whether that be the world, other people, or yourself, and that can be expected, because I think we teach young people rigid morality, and that's not how war unfolds.
Right.
I think we need to teach resilience, I think, and that when the meaning of morality is ripped away from a young person's life, as I said before, there's two natural responses. Either you fight life and you resist, and you unconsciously believe that every fist that you're throwing is somehow going to change what has already happened. When in fact, all you're doing is each fist is hitting yourself, and doing so with greater intensity. So you can either resist, or you can acknowledge what has already happened. When you resist, a lot of times, where there was morality, there becomes nothing, no source of meaning. And in that space is like, visualize, the vacuum of space. And you're instinctually want to grasp onto some form of new meaning where morality has escaped.
All right. Well, I have to do one of these things where I have to ask you to hold that thought.
Please.
We're going to take a short break here. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. You've been listening to the Discomfort Zone on WKPS, The Line, 90.7 FM. And once again, for a little while anyway, I have in the studio with me Lieutenant Colonel Bill Edmonds. Yes, Bill Edmonds. My apologies. Memory's not what it ought to be. And well, you've been listening in. I'm not going to try to refresh all that we've talked about, but if you've missed any part of that, I'm going to encourage you to visit my sites.psu.edu/Hutch, HUTCH 153 website, and we'll get that posted here later this evening. So anyway, Bill, let's try to pick up where we left off, if you can remember where that was.
I believe that, I left off with that we, especially American military, derive a great source of meaning in life from our morality, and that when you go to war, you immerse yourself in the crucible of human existence, and other times those experiences rip that morality away, and in the space that where morality once existed, there becomes nothing. You are without meaning, and like vacuum of space, you can either deny or you can surrender. And when you deny or resist what has happened, other times your mind catches on and grasps for a new source of meaning to fill that space. And unfortunately, often that new source of meaning is immensely negative and counterproductive. When morality is lost, a lot of times the mind will grasp on two sources of meaning: rage at the world, rage at existence, whether that be God or something else, rage at other people and everyone else. And then you turn that rage inward. And rage turned inward is shame.
Right.
Which is much different than guilt. Guilt is about something you have done, an act. Guilt allows for repentance and absolution. Shame does not. Shame is about who you are as a person. Shame makes you want to sink into the floor and disappear. Shame and rage are extremely destructive. New sources of meaning that are unconsciously grasped, that fill that space where morality once existed. But once you can get a person to understand that all the pain that they're feeling isn't something that exists out there and is coming in here. All of it, every last ounce is coming from up here.
Yeah.
And I'm pointing to my head.
That's right, yeah.
And my body has no choice but to respond to the orders of my brain. And once you understand that, you understand the mechanics or the structure and therefore the function of the brain. You can move beyond that illusion, which is suffering.
So you were talking earlier about how many of the traditions that we've had, there were people that had it right, and we've kind of lost track of what they had. This idea, this concept of how, and I'm speaking from someone who doesn't know entirely what he's talking about, but kind of the concept, the idea that we have in Buddhism of being, able to tune out the negative things. Basically you're creating your own reality in, in how you think about things. And we've pretty much, like you said, most people, certainly, I can't, it's like, of course I react this way. The world is making me react this way. And no, it's your choice in terms of how your brain interprets that information. Mm-hmm. How you experience it is entirely up to you. And this is, as in this age, is a really radical idea. One of those things, wow, finally I get to talk about that. That's great. Let me ask you a question. I'm trying to put myself in the mind of our listeners. We've talked a lot. You've talked about a lot this morning about morality. What's your definition of that? I wonder if people I have a feeling that people get stuck on the word like morality's become a bad thing in some way?
Well, morality is merely, the codes, values, and ideals that structure your life on how the world, other people, and yourself should or should not act or behave or interact. It's what occurs when it's built. I guess I'll start from the beginning. We come into this world with two amazing miracles. The abilities and propensity. As I said before, I can quite literally imagine another things, whether that be a rock, a worm, a dog, a human, or a planet. I can imagine that other consciousness experience, and I can step into that world. And when I do, I can perceive what they are thinking and feeling, and reproduce that in myself. And when I sense harm being done, I have this deep inner drive to respond, to lessen that harm and suffering. Because I'm born able to feel and wanting to alleviate suffering, because another thing's suffering can become my own. That is empathy and compassion.
Right, absolutely.
And these two, inner ability and propensity or inclination, this is the source and basis for morality. This is what allows us to, when the world comes into my eyes and nose and ear and mouth and touch, and I sense the world around me, my brain labels every sensory every sense, and I label it. And most often, that label is with the label of good and bad, whether that is something that is I want to pull toward me or I want to push away from me, and that is the source of morality. That is what allows the immense diverse range of moral codes and around the world, because they're all so very different. Even between you and me,
right? Sure,
it varies immensely. But there are some commonalities between people. I guess and cultures and nations and even around races.
Well, if I'm hearing you right, one of the things, morality is self-constructed.
Yes.
Now, where you get it from, I mean, you may get it. People may get it from the same source or from parents or friends or whatever. But
I would say morality is comes from both nature and is nurtured, and from the moment we're born, life, whether that be a parent or an experience or other peers or institutions, inculcate a morality, and we grow up, and that morality becomes much more profound and all-consuming as we grow, and the unconscious expectations that the world will abide by that strict code.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Bill. This is great. There's a lot to absorb. What didn't I ask here? What should I have asked you? I'm still figuring out this interviewing thing. I'm still working on it.
Are you still working on it? Well, so am I. Good. I guess we're both, we're both students.
That's always, right? Yeah.
Anything else about... I think before you mentioned God is not here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you sort of got it. So just lay it out. I think you pretty much hinted at where that came from. I mean, the experience was, in the environment that I'm in here, where is God? I mean, where is Whereas by saying, and I don't know, I'm trying to put words in your mouth, and that's a mistake. So, if you want to touch on that again, that'd be. Well, God is not here.
Well, I mean, that's
the experience.
That was the experience,
right?
If you want to summarize,
that's what it felt like.
That the book is trying to convey the felt experience
right.
of my experience in war, and how that experience impacted me and my family and those around me, and how over time, because of a small community of altruistic, empathetic, and compassionate people, they allowed me to. There's a saying, I guess. It's that the memories that you can embrace, you can process, and what you process, you can transform, and what you can transform no longer haunts you.
Right.
And I guess they allowed that safe place for me to embrace my experiences.
There you are.
To process my experiences and to therefore transform my experience. And in Iraq, I guess, if we consider a person and all that gives them purpose in life, and you pull back the layers, from the identity that you get from morality, or the identity from a job, or identity from a partner in life, or your source of meaning that you get from more superficial things like car or body or intellect. You pull all of these layers away, and you see who you are. I am not any of those things.
Right.
There is just I am, and I am is the same as you are.
Right.
We all are.
We are. Yeah.
We are all different forms of consciousness, and we are all connected. It just happens that human beings are perhaps the most complex form of consciousness that in the universe, or at least I'm aware of in the universe.
So, I'm pardon me interrupted. That random thought comes to mind. I don't know what direction you came in at the northeast corner of campus. There's this big statue that was erected recently. We are. It's kind of a Penn State theme.
Is it?
And every time I see the statue, I said, "You don't know how profound that is." It's meant to. It's meant to identifying with Penn State, and but it's really pretty much deep. We are is a pretty profound idea. That's just the way it strikes me.
There's a over the entrance to the temple at Delphi to the god Apollo is a profound statement. It's know thyself. But I think most people who went in there to find themselves didn't truly understand the profundity of that statement, because you cannot find thyself in something else. Underneath.
Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
So some years back, I actually went there and had wonderful explanation by the tour guide, talking how people would come, a great effort to get to the Delphi, and looking for answers to some profound question, and the answer they get would always be vague and hard to, like, what exactly do you mean by that? Nothing concrete. And her explanation was, that was my intent. Don't come here looking for an answer. You have the answer. Go figure it out. And so they would give these vague things, pushing people away to say, no, the answer is within you. Which I thought was really clever. But yeah. Anyway.
So I think go back to your question, is that if you want to read my book, you look at it as a guide to dysfunction.
Okay.
Or dysfunctional living. what not to do. It's my own version of living unwisely for dummies.
Yeah. Well, most of us take pretty long time to get to. Yeah.
And in Iraq, I could not sense God, and I don't see God as a being. I see God as being, which is a profound difference, and that all religious, even though they don't know it, religious, spiritual, humanistic traditions point to that same truth, that there is being and not a being, and that they were less concerned about trying to define a omnipotent and omnipresent entity, and more concerned about teaching you and about your inner state of being and living wisely in the world. And the world being what is happening right now, not something different, I guess.
So, at risk, even though I called this show the Discomfort Zone, I found myself trying to know the audience and treading carefully, not saying things that, as I put people's heads on fire too much. But this is a conversation I've been longing to have for a long time. But in the Bible, one of the opening sentences, translated correctly, is "We are." we are that we are. It's it's mistranslated into the singular. Anyway, I just think that's an interesting, going back to kind of the point that you're making. Anyway, so now I've done it. I've said it out loud. I'd love to. This is a conversation. I'm just going to have to, absorb it a bit. Yeah. My general theme is to quit while I'm ahead, or at least try to do that. So I hope our listeners have enjoyed this. I certainly have. I'm going to give it one more shot if there's anything. And again, if there's someone, this is your last chance here. If you want to call in with a question, you can reach us here at 814-865-9577. That's 865 WKPS. All right, we got to call it quits at some point. Okay. What's your parting shot, Bill?
My parting shot. Wow. I would encourage everyone to realize that they are not their minds. That you are not what you're smelling. You are that which can smell. You are not what you're seeing.
Right.
You are that which can see. You're not what you're hearing. You are that which can hear. And you are not what your brain is thinking. You are that which can think. And when that becomes part of your daily life, your world transforms. When you can step out of the prison that we are all in, the prison of our own creation that we are making brick by brick every single day, and not realizing that's where we live. When we can step out of that, the world transforms, and our full potential can be realized.
That sounds good to me.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Lieutenant Colonel Bill Edmonds, it's been a real pleasure having you. I'm so glad that you, at this moment's notice, that you stepped in to do this.
My pleasure.
I hope you had half as much fun as I did.
Thank you.
And if you're ever in the neighborhood, feel free to stop in again.
I will.
And maybe I'll step into Sam's class today. I just might have to do that. All right. Well, thank you. Listeners, thanks for joining us today. Once again, you've been listening to the Discomfort Zone on the line 90.7 FM, WKPS. We will see you next week, I believe.